Hello everybody, and welcome back to another ASMR video, where today I will be reading you Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. And if you haven't noticed, I have a new microphone. It is the Tascam DR05X, and it's a little handheld mic, so I can move around and still record everything, which is quite nice. And it makes me feel like a news reporter, I guess. But I ordered a cover for the mic, but it didn't get here yet, so I'm just using my Blue Yeti's mic cover for now. It doesn't really fit, but we're just gonna deal with it for now. At least it keeps it does the job. So, because without the cover, you can hear all the breathing, like the wind sound and everything. So yeah. Anyway, let's get started with this book. I should have bought a tripod for this mic, but because I don't know I'm gonna read this with one hand, but bear with me now. And I think I'm gonna read like the first 25 pages because I'm a pretty slow reader. So yeah, let's get right into this book. I think I only read like the first 5-10 pages, and I was like, you know what, I'll do a video on it too, so I can read it while, recording. But I mean, I've heard a lot about this book, both good and bad, so I decided it's about finances, which is pretty interesting. So I'm like, might as well read it. So I got the book. It was like $10. It was pretty cheap, so it's not like I broke my wallet to buy this book. So hopefully it'll have some interesting, useful stuff. If not, it's whatever. Anyway, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is a starting point for anyone looking to gain control of their financial future. USA Today. And it's talking about the milestones. I don't know if you can see that, but this isn't like the first page, it's just like, I guess, introduction. Why milestones are important. People of all cultures and countries celebrate milestones. We use them to measure time, mark progress, reflect on the lessons we've learned, and celebrate accomplishments. They are a way that we integrate past, present, and future, looking back at where we started, where we are today, and the promise of all that the future can hold. I apologize if you can hear the background noise, by the way. Milestones give meaning to a journey and help us to not only savor each small step, but celebrate the leaps and bounds that catapult us forward. Whether it's a birthday or anniversary, the number of years a business has outlasted the competition, the death of an icon, or an innovation that will change our lives. Milestones are a part of all that we are, and all that we will become. A quarter century has passed since Rich Dad, Poor Dad was first published, 25 years since April 8th, 1997, and so many things in our world have changed. One thing that has not changed is the pressing need for and the power of financial education. Now, I don't know about y'all, they didn't teach us finances in school, so a lot of people out there are financially unaware. I was also, but I'm trying to learn as much as I can to, be more financially secure. Money is still a mainstay of our lives, like it or not, and technology has brought both speed and innovation to the world of money. All the more reason it seems to do all that we can to get smarter with our money, learn as much as we can, and to take control financial futures. As the Rich Dad Company celebrates this milestone, I am humbled. Is that music I hear? I'm gonna lower the volume while I'm editing. As the Rich Dad Company celebrates this milestone, I am humbled by the stories from around the world of people who have put the Rich Dad principles to work in their lives and who are sharing what they've learned and achieved with their family and friends, their children and grandchildren. Signed, Robert Kiyosaki. The lessons of Rich Dad, Poor Dad have stood the test of time. Although 25 years have passed since Rich Dad, Poor Dad was first published, you'll find that very little in the book itself has changed. We've done a few updates to the cover over the years and added some sidebars and 2020 hindsight notes at the 20th anniversary milestone. But that's about it, because the lessons about money and the principles of Rich Dad, Poor Dad haven't changed. That's important to point that out because it speaks to the fact that this book, often referred to as a classic in personal finance, has truly stood the test of time. New generations have found that its timeless wisdom and no-nonsense lessons have applied to anyone's life, and I am grateful to all the parents and grandparents, aunts and uncles, mentors and teachers, and thought leaders around the world who have shared copies of Rich Dad, Poor Dad with those they love. Dedication to parents everywhere, a child's first and most important teacher, and to all those who educate, influence, and lead by example. And we have the table of contents here. I don't know if you can see that or not. First chapter is Introduction. Okay, chapter 1. I think milestones and hindsights. 5 years ago, when we reached our first major milestone, marking 20 years since Rich Dad, Poor Dad was first published, I wrote these words. The Beatles released the Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band album on June 1st, 1967. It was an immediate commercial and critical success, spending 27 weeks at the top of the album charts in the UK and 15 weeks at number 1 in the United States. Time magazine declared Sgt. Pepper's a historic departure in the progress of music. It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1968, as well as Album of the Year, the first rock album ever to receive that honor. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was released 20 years ago on my 50th birthday, on April 8th, 1997. Unlike the Beatles story, the book was not an immediate commercial success. It was not a critical success. In fact, the book's release and the firestorm of criticism that followed was quite the opposite. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was originally self-published because every book publisher we approached to turn my book down. A few rejection slips offered comments like, "You do not know what you are talking about." I learned that most publishers are more like my highly educated poor dad than my rich dad. Most publishers disagreed with my rich dad's lessons on money, as did my poor dad. 20 years ago today, in 1997, Rich Dad, Poor Dad was a warning, a book of lessons about the future. 20 years later, millions of people around the world are more aware of my Rich Dad's warning and his lessons about the future. With 2020 hindsight, many have said that his lessons were prophetic. Am I saying that right? Predictions come true. A few of those lessons are: Rich Dad's lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. 20 years ago, a few publishers turned my book down because they did not agree with Rich Dad's number 1 lesson. Today, people are more aware of the growing divide between the rich and everyone else. Between 1993 and 2010, over 50% of the increase in the national income in the US went to the wealthiest 1%. Since then, things have only gotten worse. Economists at the University of California found that 95% of the income gains between the year 2009 and 2012 also went to the wealthiest 1%. That's kind of crazy. The lesson: the increases in income are going to entrepreneurs and investors, not to employees, not to the people who work for money. Rich Dad lesson: savers are losers. 20 years ago, most publishers vehemently disagreed with this lesson from Rich Dad. For the poor and middle class, saving money is a religion, financial salvation from poverty, and protection from the cruel world. For many, calling savers losers is like taking God's name in vain. The lesson: a picture is worth 1,000 words. Take a look at the chart of 120 years of the Dow Jones Industrial Average and you will see why and how savers became losers. The chart shows there have been 3 massive stock market crashes in the first 10 years of this new century. The chart below illustrates these 3 crashes. There's the chart. 120 years of the Dow, from 1895 to 2015. The first crash was the dot-com crash around the year 2000. The second and third crashes were the real estate crash of 2007, followed by the banking crash of 2008. The giant crash of 1929. When you compare the first 3 crashes of the 21st century to the giant crash of 1929, you gain a perspective of how truly giant the first 3 crashes of the century were. Printing money. The chart below shows that after each crash, the US government and the Federal Reserve Bank began printing money, saving the rich. Between the years 2000 to 2016, in the name of saving the economy, the banks of the world kept cutting interest rates and printing money. While our leaders want us to believe they were saving the world, in reality, the rich were saving themselves and threw the poor and the middle class under the bus. Today, interest rates in many countries are below 0, which is why savers are losers. Today, the biggest losers are the poor and middle class, the people who work for money and save money. Rich Dad lesson: your house is not an asset. 20 years ago in 1997, every publisher who sent me a rejection slip criticized Rich Dad's lesson that your house is not an asset. 10 years later, in 2007, when subprime borrowers began to default on their subprime mortgages, the world's real estate bubble burst, and millions of homeowners found out the truth in that lesson the hard way. Their house was not an asset. 10 years later, 2007, when subprime borrowers began to default on their... I just read that. The real problem: most people do not know that the real estate crash was not really a real estate crash. Poor people did not cause the real estate crash. The rich caused the real estate crash. The rich created financially engineered products known as derivatives. Products Warren Buffett has called weapons of mass financial destruction. When the financial weapons of mass destruction started to explode, the real estate market crashed and poor subprime borrowers were blamed. My hair's getting in the way. In 2007, there were an estimated $700 trillion in financial derivatives. Today, it is estimated there are $1.2 quadrillion in financial derivatives. In other words, the real problem has gotten bigger, not better. Rich Dad lesson: why the rich pay less in taxes. 20 years ago, a publisher criticized Rich Dad Poor Dad for disclosing how and why the rich pay less in taxes. One stated the lesson was illegal. 10 years later, in 2007, President Barack Obama was running for re-election against former Governor Mitt Romney when it was disclosed that President Obama paid approximately 30% of his income in taxes, and Governor Romney paid less than 13% in taxes. Mitt Romney began the downhill slide that would cost him the election. Taxes, again, were a focal point in the 2016 U.S. presidential election. Rather than find out how people like Mitt Romney and President Donald Trump pay less in taxes illegally, the poor and middle class get angry. While President Trump promises to reduce taxes for the poor and middle class, the reality is the rich will always pay less in taxes. The reason the rich pay less in taxes goes back to Rich Dad's lesson number 1. The rich don't work for money. As long as a person works for money, they will pay taxes. Even when the presidential candidate Hillary Clinton was promising to raise the taxes on the rich, she was promising to raise the taxes on those with high incomes, people like doctors, actors, and lawyers, not the real rich. 20 years ago, although Rich Dad Poor Dad was not an immediate success like the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's album, Rich Dad Poor Dad did make the New York Times bestseller list by the year 2000 and stayed on that list for nearly 7 years. Also in the year 2000, Oprah Winfrey called. I was on Oprah for the entire hour, and as they say, the rest is history. Rich Dad Poor Dad has become the #1 personal finance book in history, with sales of the Rich Dad Poor Dad series of books estimated at nearly 40 million copies worldwide. Was there really a rich dad? Millions have asked. Was there really a rich dad? To answer that question, you can listen to Rich Dad's son, Mike, when he was a guest on the Rich Dad radio show. You can listen to that program by going to richradio.com. Rich Dad Graduate School. Rich Dad Poor Dad was written as simply as possible so that almost everyone could understand my Rich Dad lessons. For those who want to learn more as part of the 20-year celebration, I wrote, Why the Rich Are Getting Richer. What is financial education really? Why the Rich Are Getting Richer goes into greater, more specific detail on what Rich Dad really taught his son and me when it came to money and investing. Why the Rich Are Getting Richer is Rich Dad Poor Dad for graduate students. It's graduate school for Rich Dad students. A warning and an invitation. While I did my best to keep Why the Rich Are Getting Richer as simple as possible, what the rich really do is not easy or easy to explain. What the rich really do requires real financial education, and financial education not taught in our schools. I suggest reading Rich Dad Poor Dad first, then if you want to learn more Why the Rich Are Getting Richer, maybe for you. Okay, we're finally at the introduction. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. I had two fathers, a rich one and a poor one. One was highly educated and intelligent. He had a PhD and completed 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2 years. He then went on to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University to do his advanced studies, all on full financial scholarships. The other father never finished the 8th grade. Both men were successful in their careers, working hard all their lives. Both earned substantial incomes, yet one always struggled financially. The other would become one of the richest men in Hawaii. One died leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, charities, and his church. The other left bills to be paid when he died. Both men were strong, charismatic, and influential. Both men offered me advice, but they did not advise the same things. Both men believed strongly in education, but did not recommend the same course of study. If I had only one dad, I would have had to accept or reject his advice. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. Instead of simply simply accepting or rejecting one or the other, I found myself thinking more, comparing, and then choosing for myself. The problem was the rich man was not rich yet, and the poor man was not yet poor. Both were just starting out on their careers, and both were struggling with money and families, but they had very different points of view about money. For example, one dad would say, the love of money is the root of all evil, and the other said, the lack of money is the root of all evil. As a young boy, having two strong fathers, both influencing me, was difficult. I wanted to be a good son and listen, but the two fathers did not say the same things. The contrast in their points of view, particularly about money, was so extreme that I grew curious and intrigued. I began to start thinking for long periods of time about what each was saying. Much of my private time was spent reflecting, asking myself questions such as, why does he say that? And then asking the same question of the other dad's statement. It would have been much easier to simply say, yeah, he's right, I agree with that, or to simply reject the point of view by saying, the old man doesn't know what he's talking about. Instead, having two dads whom I loved forced me to think and ultimately choose a way of thinking for myself. As a process, choosing for myself turned out to be much more valuable in the long run than simply accepting or rejecting a single point of view. One of the reasons the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class struggles in debt is that the subject of money is taught at home and not in school. Most of us learn about money from our parents, so what can poor parents tell their child about money? They simply say, stay in school and study hard. The child may graduate with excellent grades, but with a poor person's financial programming and mindset. Sadly, money is not taught in schools. Schools must focus on scholastic and professional skills, but not on financial skills. This explains why smart bankers, doctors, and accountants who earned excellent grades may struggle financially all of their lives. Our staggering national debt is due in large part to highly educated politicians and government officials making financial decisions with little or no training in the subject of money. Today, I often wonder what will happen when we have millions of people who need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the government for financial support. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? And as a little side note here, 25 years later, the debt clock in 1997, when Rich Dad was first published, the U.S. national debt was just under $5.5 trillion. Today, 25 years later, it has topped a staggering $29 trillion. That's trillion with a D. How will a nation survive if teaching children about money continues to be left to parents, most of whom will be or already are poor? Because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, I gained valuable insight into the power and effect of one's thoughts on one's life. For example, one dad had a habit of saying, I can't afford it. The other dad forbade those words to be used. He insisted I ask, how can I afford it? One is a statement, and the other is a question. One lets you off the hook, and the other forces you to think. My soon-to-be rich dad would explain that by automatically saying the words, I can afford it, your brain stops working. By asking the question, how can I afford it? Your brain is put to work. He did not mean that you should buy everything you want. He was fanatical about exercising your mind, the most powerful computer in the world. He'd say, my brain gets stronger every day because I exercise it. The stronger it gets, the more money I can make. He believed that automatically saying, I can't afford it, was a sign of mental laziness. Although both dads worked hard, I noticed that one dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it came to finances, and the other had a habit of exercising his brain. The long-term result was that one dad grew stronger financially, and the other grew weaker. It is not much different from a person who goes to the gym to exercise on a regular basis versus someone who sits on the couch watching television. Proper physical exercise increases your chances for health, and proper mental exercise increases your chances for wealth. My two dads had opposing attitudes, and that affected, one, the way they thought. One dad thought that the rich should pay more in taxes to take care of those less fortunate. The other said taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't produce. One dad recommended study hard so you can find a good company to work for. The other recommended study hard so you can find a good company to buy. One dad said, the reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids. The other said, the reason I must be rich is because I have you kids. One encouraged talking about money and business at the dinner table, while the other forbade the subject of money to be discussed over a meal. One said, when it comes to money, play it safe, don't take risks. The other said, learn to manage risk. One believed our home is our largest investment and our greatest asset. The other believed my house is a liability, and if your house is your large investment, you're in trouble. Both dads paid their bills on time, yet one paid his bills first, while the others paid his bills last. Another note, 25 years later, your house is still not an asset. The 2008 housing market crash was a clear message that your personal residence is not an asset. Not only does it not put money in your pockets, but we cannot count on the fact that it will go up in value. Today, many cities are seeing sky-high property values. Others are experiencing just the opposite. Your house can be an asset if you realize a profit when you sell it. One dad believed in a company or the government taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned. This is tough to read with one hand. He was always concerned about pay raises, retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, vacation days, and other perks. He was impressed with two of his uncles who joined the military and earned a retirement and entitlement package for life after 20 years of active service. He loved the idea of medical benefits and PX privileges the military provided its retirees. He also loved the 10-year system available to the university. The idea of job protection for life and job benefits seemed more important at times than the job. He would often say, I've worked hard for the government and I'm entitled to these benefits. The other believed in total financial self-reliance. He spoke out against the entitlement mentality and how it created weak and financially needy people. He was emphatic about being financially competent. One dad struggled to save a few dollars. The other created investments. One dad taught me how to write an impressive resume so I could find a good job. The other taught me how to write strong business and financial plans so I could create jobs. Being a product of two strong dads allowed me the luxury of observing the effects different thoughts have on one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their lives through their thoughts. For example, my dad always said, I'll never be rich, and that prophecy became reality. My rich dad, on the other hand, always referred to himself as rich. He would say things like, I'm a rich man, and rich people don't do this. Even when he was flat broke after a major financial setback. He continued to refer to himself as a rich man. He would cover himself by saying, there is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is a temporary, poor is eternal. My poor dad would say, I'm not interested in money, or money doesn't matter. My rich dad always said, money is power. The power of our thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it became obvious to me as a young boy that it was important to be aware of my thoughts and how I expressed myself. I noticed that my poor dad was poor, not because of the amount of money he earned, which was significant, but because of his thoughts and actions. As a young boy, having two fathers, I became acutely aware of being careful about which thoughts I chose to adopt as my own. Should I listen to my rich dad or to my poor dad? Although both men had a tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed about what they thought was important to learn. One wanted me to study hard, earn a degree, and get a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study to become a professional, an attorney, or an accountant, and to go to business school for my MBA. The other encouraged me to study to be rich, to understand how money works, and to learn how to have it work for me. I don't work for money, chose not to listen to my poor dad, even though he was the one with all the college degrees. A lesson from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my favorite poet. Although I love many of his poems, my favorite is The Road Not Taken. I use his lessons almost daily. The road not taken. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler long I stood, and I looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other, as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that, the passing there had warned them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay, and leaves no step had trodden back. Oh, I kept the first for another day, and knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh. Somewhere ages and ages hence, 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And that has made all the difference. Over the years, I often reflect upon Robert Frost's poem. Choosing not to listen to my highly educated dad's advice and attitude about money was a painful decision, but it was a decision that shaped the rest of my life. Once I made up my mind about whom to listen to, my education about money began. My rich dad taught me over a period of 30 years until I was 39 years old. He stopped once he realized that I knew and fully understood what he had been trying to drum into my often thick skull. Money is one form of power, but what is more powerful is financial education. Money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how money works, you gain power over it and can begin building wealth. The reason positive thinking alone does not work is because most people went to school and never learned how money works, so they spend their lives working for money. Because I was only 9 years old when I started, the lessons my rich dad taught me were simple, and when it was all said and done, there were only 6 main lessons repeated over 30 years. This book is about those 6 lessons, put as simply as possible, just as simply as my rich dad put forth. Those lessons to me, the lessons are meant not to be answers, but guideposts that will assist you and your children and your families to grow wealthier no matter what happens in a world of increasing change and uncertainty. And that was the introduction. We've got to chapter 1. But I'm gonna I'm gonna end the video here because that was including the biography or whatever, the introduction. That was 30 pages. And I need to find a better way to film this because I have to hold the cover, and I also hold the book while reading. And I should have probably bought a tripod for this mic, which I probably will do. But I'll figure it out. It's a new mic, new setup, and whatnot. So I'm still fidgeting with everything and trying to figure out how to make a better setup. So, if there's anything, like background noise or other stuff going on in the video, I apologize because I'm still figuring things out. But I hope you enjoyed the first couple pages of Rich Dad Poor Dad. So far, seems like a interesting book, and I'm looking forward to reading the whole thing with y'all because being able to read while also filming an ASMR video, it's nice because I get to read the book and y'all get to listen and y'all also get to relax. So yeah, a win-win. But I will definitely read the rest of the book for y'all. I just need to record I just need to record it. But yeah, once I get this whole setup figured out, I hope to see you all in a future video.